Hey, you know that feeling. You get this like brilliant idea just pops into your head
Oh, yeah.
and you think, wow, this could actually be huge.
hmm
But then almost immediately there's that little nagging voice, right, that says, okay, but you'll really work.
Happens every time. That doubt creeps in.
Exactly. So today we're going to get into that. How do you test out those brilliant sparks, see if there's a real fire there without like building the whole massive thing first?
Yeah, it's all about what people call idea validation. Basically, checking if your idea has legs before you run a marathon with it.
Right. It's looking beyond just your excitement. It's about figuring out, does this genuinely solve a real problem for actual people?
Absolutely. And we've gathered some really practical insights today. We'll go from really understanding the core issues people face all the way to some, frankly, surprisingly simple ways to see if your idea actually clicks with them.
Yeah, our goal is pretty straightforward. Give you some real down-to-earth strategies you can actually use, like right away.
So by the end of this, hopefully, you'll feel a bit clearer on those next steps, whether that's charging ahead or maybe, taking a step back and tweaking things a bit.
Okay, sounds good. Let's jump in.
All right. So where do we start? It sounds almost too basic, maybe. But the very first thing, and honestly, it gets overlooked so often,
What's that?
it's really, really digging into the core problem you think you're solving.
The problem itself, not just the shiny solution.
Exactly. One of our sources, Opinion X, made a fantastic point about this. People aren't just wandering around looking for cool ideas, right? They're actively looking for solutions to their headaches, and not just any minor annoyance.
That the big ones, the really pressing stuff.
Precisely. The high-priority problems.
It's so easy, though, isn't it, to get carried away with how cool your solution is, the features, the tech.
Oh, totally. And Opinion X calls this the idea greater than problem trap. You get laser focused on the what you're building.
And you forget the why. Like, what problem are we actually solving? And, maybe more importantly, how much does that problem really bug people?
That's the absolute core of it. Solving a problem. Okay, fine. But solving a high priority problem, that's where you find real potential for success.
Think about it in your own life, right? You've got tons of little things that are annoying, but you only really go looking for fixes for the things that cause genuine pain or cost you serious money or just consistently suck up your time.
Exactly. And Opinion X actually breaks down these high priority problems into three helpful categories. You've got problems that are expensive,
Okay,
problems that are frequent,
right.
and problems that are just plain boring.
Interesting breakdown. Expensive, frequent, boring. Can you unpack those a little?
Sure. So expensive isn't just dollars and cents, though it can be. It could also be expensive in terms of time or energy or even the mental stress it causes. Think opportunity cost.
Gotcha. Like something that drains your resources, whatever those resources are.
Exactly. Then frequent, these might seem small each time they happen, like a little daily hiccup. But if it happens day in, day out,
It adds up, becomes a major drag.
totally. And then boring. These are the tasks that are just tedious, repetitive, mind-numbing, the stuff people procrastinate on forever because it's just,
Yeah, I know those well.
we all do. So if your idea tackles a problem that's expensive or frequent or boring or maybe even a combination, chances are you're hitting on something people will actually value.
That really clicks. Like manually entering data into spreadsheets for hours every week, that's time expensive, definitely boring.
Perfect example. Or maybe a clunky software that crashes all the time and loses a small business potential sales. That's financially expensive and probably frequent and frustrating too.
Okay, so the takeaway here is, before you fall head over heels for your solution, really spend time nailing down the specific problem. And be honest, how big of a deal is this problem, really, for the people you want to help?
You got it. That foundation is crucial.
All right, so let's say we've wrestled with the problem. We feel like we've got a good handle on it. What's next? Seems like all our sources point in one direction here.
Yeah, they really do. It's time to actually talk to people, potential customers.
Real humans, not just, your mom or your best friend who thinks everything you do is amazing.
Exactly. Both Founders Network and LivePlan specifically warn about that, relying only on friends and family. Well, their feedback is usually biased. You get encouragement, which is nice.
But not the hard truths you might need.
Precisely. You need that unbiased, sometimes critical perspective to see if the idea holds up in the real world.
And this brings us to something called the listening path, right? Lenny's newsletter mentioned this. What's that about?
The listening path is basically about being really intentional. Go out and have actual conversations with a decent number of potential users. Lenny's piece suggested maybe around 30 people as a good median number to aim for.
30 conversations. Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's not a tiny number.
Yeah.
And the key here is the goal. It's not to pitch your idea, not to sell them anything.
So what is the goal then?
It's just listening,
Yeah.
pure listening, trying to deeply understand their world, their daily routines, their frustrations. You're looking for those genuine pull factors,
Yeah.
the problems they are already trying to solve, the things they're actively looking for help with.
Okay, but how do you make those conversations, actually useful? You can't just walk up and say, hey, tell me your problems. Or worse, would you use my amazing new thing?
Definitely not the second one. The Reddit discussions we looked at had some really gold nuggets on this, how to ask good questions in these customer development interviews.
Like what?
Well, one user, Warren F., suggested focusing on JPGMT jobs, pains, gains, metrics, and tools.
Could break that down. JPG.
All right.
So.
Jobs.
Uh-huh.
What tasks are they actually trying to accomplish?
Right.
Pains. What frustrates them or blocks them during those tasks?
Mm.
Gains. What would make their lives significantly better or easier related to those tasks? Metrics. How do they currently measure success or failure in that area? And tools. What are they using right now to try and deal with it?
Wow, that's a really solid framework. Jobs, pains, gains, metrics, tools. It gives you structure.
Yeah, and stops you from just rambling. And another Redditor, COVID Ambassador, really stressed asking open-ended questions and listening not just to what's said, but for the unspoken needs, the things between the lines.
And they also warned about leading the witness, right? Asking
Yeah.
if your specific idea solves their problem.
Huge warning on that one. It's so tempting, but it poisons the well. If you ask, would my amazing app solve this problem for you? They might just say yes to be nice.
Or because they can sort of see it, maybe, but it's not their real pain point.
Exactly. You haven't actually understood their struggle deeply. You have to understand the problem from their view in detail before you even whisper up about your solution.
Makes sense. And wasn't there another Reddit tip about mapping out their process?
Yes. Someone whose username was deleted, sadly, but their advice was great. Start the meeting by saying what you hope to learn. Then actually draw out their current workflow together. Live, like on a whiteboard or a shared screen.
Ooh, I like that. Visual. It probably helps uncover bottlenecks they don't even think about consciously.
It really does. You can literally point and say, so what happens here? Does that ever get frustrating? And Founders Network had another crucial reminder. Don't confuse interest with validation.
What's the difference there?
Someone might say, oh, that sounds like a cool idea. That's interest. But it doesn't mean they'd actually pay for it or switch from what they're doing now. Validation is stronger. It's looking for signals like, are they willing to invest time, money? What are they cobbling together now as a workaround? That tells you the pain is real.
So these first chats, it's like detective work almost, uncovering the real problems, not selling your solution.
Exactly. OpinionX really nails this. At this stage, you are 100% in listening mode, deeply understanding their challenges. It feels slow, maybe, but this groundwork, it's everything. It's how you build something people actually want.
Okay. Listening done. We think we understand the problem better. Now what? We still haven't built anything. How do we test if people actually want our solution without, spending a year and a fortune building it?
Right. This is where the famous MVP comes in, minimum viable product.
Ah, yes, the MVP. Heard that term a lot.
Both VentureVerse and LivePlan talked about this. It's basically the simplest, most stripped-down version of your product that still provides the core value. Enough to get it out there and test your main assumptions about what people need.
So super lean version 1, just the essentials to see if it works and get feedback.
Exactly. But even before you build that, there are even simpler ways to just gauge interest.
Like what? Less than an MVP.
Yeah. VentureVerse suggested things like surveys and polls. Using Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, tools like that.
Okay. What would you ask?
Targeted questions about their interest in a solution like yours. You could even float potential price points to get a very early read on willingness to pay.
That sounds pretty low effort, low risk. Good way to get some numbers early on. What about getting feedback that's a bit deeper but still pre-MVP?
That leads into what LivePlan calls the prototype path. This means creating some kind of basic mock-up or representation of your idea.
So not working software, but like pictures or sketches.
Could be sketches for a physical product, yeah.
Yeah.
Or wireframes for an app, simple screen layouts showing the flow, just something tangible potential customers can react to. LivePlan even suggested showing a few different versions to see what clicks.
I think we saw some real examples of this too. Didn't Shopify mention Dandelion Chocolate?
They did. Great example. They started just getting feedback from friends, family,
Mm.
then took their actual chocolate to a farmer's market. Super direct prototyping and testing with real customers.
Very hands-on. And wasn't there that story about Slack?
Oh yeah, that's a classic. From the 10 Successful Idea Validation Strategies article.
Mm-hmm.
Slack, the communication tool we all know.
Yeah.
It actually started as an internal tool for the team while they were building a video game.
No way.
Yeah. The game apparently didn't do so well, but they realized their internal chat system was actually really good. So they tested it with a few other companies.
Yeah.
The feedback was amazing. They realized that was the real product.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of an internal tool test turning into something huge.
Wow. Okay, so sometimes the validation comes from unexpected places. And what about changing direction? The pivot.
Also crucial. That same article mentions Instagram, probably the most famous pivot story.
Right. They started as something else, didn't they?
Yeah, an app called Burbnan. It was more about location check-ins, had lots of features, but they noticed users were overwhelmingly using just one feature, the photo sharing.
Ah, so they followed the users.
Exactly. Smart pivot. They stripped away everything else, doubled down on photos, and, well, the rest is history.
So watching how people actually use what you put out there, even if it's just a prototype, is a powerful form of validation itself.
Absolutely. Be observant. Be willing to adapt based on what the market tells you, not just what you initially thought.
Okay, now, there's one strategy that seems to pop up a lot, but also causes some debate. The landing page. That simple website idea. Rick Kettner's YouTube channel talked about this.
Yeah, the landing page validation method. The core idea, as Rick explains it, is pretty clever. You create a simple marketing website, make it look like the business is real, like the product exists.
Even though it doesn't. Yet.
Not necessarily the full product, no. The main goal is just to present your value proposition, what you do, who it's for, why they need it, and see how people react. Gauge that initial interest.
So you describe the product, make it sound great, and then you put like a buy now button or a sign up button.
Exactly. Call to action buttons. But here's the validation part. When someone clicks that button,
Yeah, what happens?
they don't actually buy or sign up for the full service. They land on a page that says something like, hey, thanks for your interest. We're not quite ready yet, but enter your email here and we'll let you know the moment we launch.
Uh-huh. So you're not selling, you're collecting emails. Measuring intent.
Precisely. It tests if your message, your value proposition, is compelling enough for someone to say, yes, I want this. That email sign-up is a tangible metric of interest. Microconf also talked about building that email list early as validation.
Okay, that sounds neat. But you mentioned debate. What's the other side?
Well, in that Reddit discussion, some people pushed back. They argued that just putting up a landing page isn't enough, especially if you haven't done those customer interviews first.
Why not?
Because how do you know what message will resonate, what words to use, what benefits to highlight? You might build a landing page based on your assumptions, and if it fails, you don't know if it was the idea itself or just a bad landing page.
That's a really good point. You need the insights from talking to people to even write the landing page effectively.
Exactly. But others on Reddit and sources like Microconf argue landing pages still have value, especially for maybe lower touch self-service products. It can test if you can even get relevant traffic to your offer, and it starts building that crucial email list. One suggestion was just be upfront. Hey, this is pre-launch. Sign up to be a beta tester.
And didn't Reddit also mention using ads, like paying to drive traffic?
Yeah, using something like Google Ads. Small budget, very specific keywords related to the problem you solve. Send that targeted traffic to your landing page.
And then track conversions. How many clicks turn into email signups?
Exactly. It gives you a measure of demand from people who likely have never heard of you before, a colder audience.
Okay, so landing pages, useful tool, maybe, but probably works best after or alongside actually talking to people.
That seems to be the consensus. Yeah, they complement each other.
All right. Now, shifting gears slightly, what about everyone else? The competition, how important is checking them out early on?
Oh, critical. Absolutely critical. Antler Academy really hammered this point home.
Why so critical, especially if you think your idea is totally unique?
Well, first, it's rare that an idea is completely unique with zero alternatives. People are likely solving the problem somehow already, even if it's inefficiently. But mainly, analyzing competitors helps you understand their strengths, their weaknesses.
And find the gaps, where you can fit in and offer something better or different.
Exactly. Antler Academy says this early research informs basically everything. Your product development, your marketing messages, even how you pitch it later. Knowing the landscape helps you carve out your own space. Avoids head-on collisions where there are already super strong.
Okay, so how do we figure out who these competitors even are? It's not always obvious.
Antler Academy suggests asking 3 simple questions. 1, who are your ideal customers? 2, what specific problem are you solving for them? And 3, what's your product category? Basically, what kind of solution are you offering?
So anyone who overlaps on those points is potentially a competitor.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And think broadly, not just direct competitors offering the exact same thing, also indirect competitors.
Indirect. Like what?
Someone solving the same underlying problem, but maybe in a totally different way. Or someone targeting the same audience, but with a different type of product that might still compete for their budget or attention. Antler Academy suggests aiming for maybe a top 10 list, direct and indirect.
Okay, got it. So where do we find them? Just Google.
Googling is a start, but Antler Academy had more methods. Definitely ask your potential customers, what are you using now? That's often the best source.
Makes sense.
Also, LinkedIn can be useful. Look at a known competitor's company page, and LinkedIn often suggests similar pages. That can uncover others. Keyword research tools, see who else is ranking for terms your customers search for. And maybe the most insightful, be a customer yourself. Try to solve the problem your idea addresses. See what solutions you find naturally.
Become your own target customer for a bit. Smart. Okay, so we make this list.
Yeah.
Then what? Just knowing they exist isn't enough, right?
Right. You need to dig deeper. Antler Academy recommends creating a competitor matrix, basically a spreadsheet.
What goes in the matrix?
Key details for each competitor. Things like when were they founded? How big are they? Any revenue estimates? How do they get customers their marketing channels? What's their pricing? What are their core product features? How do they sell? And even doing a quick SWOT analysis for each.
SWOT. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Exactly. For each competitor, it forces you to think strategically about their position relative to yours.
Wow, that's thorough. Where does all this info come from? Are we hiring private investigators?
Not usually necessary. A lot is public or semi-public. Financials for public companies, obviously. LinkedIn for company size, employee backgrounds. Crunchbase for funding info. Customer review sites are gold mines for understanding what people like and dislike. Even Glassdoor for employee reviews can give you clues about their internal strengths or weaknesses.
So it's detective work again, but focused on the other players.
Yeah, it's about understanding the game board so you can figure out your best moves. Find those opportunities to be different, better, faster, cheaper, whatever your angle is.
All right, so competitive analysis is key. But what if, after doing all this, talking to people, maybe building a prototype, checking competitors, what if the feedback is just, or worse? Do we just scrap the idea and cry?
Well, maybe a little cry is allowed. But no, absolutely don't just scrap it immediately. Lenny's newsletter had some great perspective on this. They highlighted huge companies like Retool and Amplitude.
Yeah. What about them?
Both went through multiple failed ideas before hitting the one that took off. It's actually super common. Failure, or at least not quite right ideas, are often part of the process.
So hitting a wall doesn't mean game over. It means detour.
Exactly. It's a signal to learn, adapt, maybe pivot. We talked about Instagram Burman earlier, perfect example. They listened to the signals, didn't they? They adapted.
Right. They didn't just stick rigidly to the original plan when the data told them otherwise.
Precisely. Your first idea is almost never the final product. That willingness to iterate, to change based on real feedback and real data, that's often what separates success from failure. Online communities constantly echo this. Adapt or die, basically.
It's about holding the vision loosely, maybe. Be guided by it, but be ready to adjust the sails based on the wind.
Beautifully put. That's exactly it.
Okay, one more specific technique we found mentioned. Pilot studies. This sounds a bit more formal, maybe scientific. What's the deal there in terms of validating an idea?
Yeah, pilot studies are a bit more structured. The PubMed Central article we looked at describes them as small-scale tests, kind of like a dress rehearsal before the main performance. You do it in a more controlled way before a big launch.
What's the main goal? What are you testing?
Feasibility, mostly, and identifying problems. Not just with the idea itself, but with your process. Can you recruit the right people easily? Are your instructions clear? Do your surveys or questionnaires actually work, or are they confusing? Is your data collection method sound?
So it's like debugging your launch plan almost on a small scale.
Exactly, that you iron out the kinks. The PubMed article mentioned finding things like unclear questions in a survey or issues with how data was being recorded. Stuff you really want to fix before you spend a lot of time and money rolling something out more widely.
That makes a ton of sense, catching those operational headaches early.
It really does. It helps you make sure that when you do launch properly, you're standing on solid ground.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Talking to people, MVPs, prototypes, landing pages, competitors, pivoting, pilot studies. As we're going through all this, what are the really fundamental questions we should keep coming back to about our idea itself?
Evan Carmichael's YouTube channel had a really good, concise set of core questions. Things like, who, specifically, is this for? Your target audience. What unique value are you actually giving them? How does it make a tangible, positive difference in their lives? And maybe the big one, what's the potentially life-changing aspect here?
Those cut right to the chase, don't they? Forces you to think beyond just features, which actually Founders Network reminded us about too, right? Focus on benefits, not features, when getting feedback.
Yes, crucial distinction. People don't buy features. They buy the outcome those features enable. They buy the relief from pain, the achievement of a goal, the saving of time or money. Focus on that benefit. What will this do for you? Not just, what does it have?
Got it. Benefits over features. Okay, last big topic, mistakes. What are the common traps people fall into when they're trying to validate their ideas? Founders Network had a list.
They did, and it's a good checklist of things to watch out for. We've touched on some already, like confusing that initial polite interest with real validation.
Right, the cool idea trap.
Yeah, and fearing negative feedback, you need the critical stuff, another big one. Trying to be everything to everyone, targeting too broadly instead of focusing on a specific niche where you can really solve a problem well.
So trying to boil the ocean instead of starting with a specific beachhead.
Exactly. Also, getting too attached to your specific feature list instead of the core benefit. Not iterating, just sticking to plan A no matter what feedback you get. And probably the biggest underlying mistake, just not testing your core assumptions early enough and often enough.
It really sounds like the antidote to most of these is staying open, being willing to listen, really listen, even to stuff you don't want to hear, and being ready to adapt.
That's the heart of it. Validation isn't a checkbox you tick once, it's a continuous loop. Learn, build a little, measure the reaction, learn some more, adapt, and repeat.
So for you listening right now, maybe feeling that buzz from your own idea. The message isn't to stall, but to be smart about the first steps. You don't need all the answers now.
Not at all. Just start asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Start testing the biggest leaps of faith you're making.
Yeah. What's like the #1 riskiest assumption you're making about your idea? The thing that if it's wrong, the whole idea falls apart.
Find that assumption, then think, what's the absolute simplest, fastest, cheapest way I could test just that one thing this week?
Could be just one conversation with one potential customer. Could be sketching a simple landing page mock-up. Just pick one thing from what we talked about.
And just do it. Get that first piece of real-world feedback.
And definitely dig into some of the resources we mentioned if you want to go deeper on MVPs or competitor analysis or any of these strategies.
Absolutely. Because that effort you put in now, validating early, it's probably the best investment you can make. It dramatically bumps up your odds of actually building something people truly value and want, something successful.
Well, this has been really insightful. Thanks so much for breaking all that down.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating process.
And thank you for tuning in. We genuinely hope this gives you some practical tools and maybe a bit more confidence to take those important first steps with your own brilliant idea. Good luck.